Hello everyone and happy Pride! Yes, I'm not letting my own inefficiency get in the way of a good theme. It's June, roll with it. Anyway, we've done the L's and the G's, so let's talk about the B's, cause believe me, this one was hard. Like, do you know there's a character named Bi Beast? This is regular Beast. I'd say jokes aside, but that's kind of the problem. There are a lot of jokes. Like when Spider-Man says he kinda dated Moon Knight, or Magic asks a bunch of hit men and a hit woman if they want to make out. Are we supposed to take them seriously, or is it a bit? Not to mention, just because someone has only dated one gender doesn't mean they're not interested in another. So theoretically, every character could be bi, but we do not have time for that, so my apologies to all of the X-Men, but simply doing things like chasing an angel, the representation of a perfect woman, into the ocean, where you undergo the universal symbol for rebirth as you are given the kiss of life by a man you think is hot and later wish was still kissing you, in a story all about how you were raised in the Catholic Church but no longer feel like it has a place for you because of how you were born, is still not gonna cut it. At minimum, I'm looking for substantive evidence of unironic interest in more than one gender, though I'd prefer a bold statement. Unfortunately, not everyone can be David Alliane, and that's sorta his whole bit. Also known as Prodigy, his powers allow him to subconsciously absorb information from anyone around him, which means he is always the smartest man in a room, though that doesn't mean he's a dummy without them. After he lost his powers, thanks to Scarlet Witch's legendary crash out over her imaginary children, he chose to remain at Xavier's, becoming a key player on the new X-Men and eventually joining the Young Avengers, where he met his boyfriend, one of those imaginary children. Yeah, Tommy Shepard, aka Speed, is the reincarnation of Wanda's fake baby with the Vision, and it is a testament to the MCU that I do not need to explain that more. He takes after his metaphysical uncle in appearance, power set, and personality, and despite that incredible setback, he still manages to be his hypothetical adopted grandfather's favorite. Everyone following along? Good. Now, he never had an I'm bi moment, at least not a serious one. Everyone could just tell, cause he's on the Young Avengers. Seriously, X-Men? Watch your back. There's another primarily queer team on the scene, and even their B-listers are making the list. Marvel Boy, aka Novar, is a member of the Kree with some cockroach DNA mixed in for spice, who originally hails from Earth 200,080, but got stranded on 616, where he started out as a villain, even fighting the Young Avengers before eventually reforming, joining the team, and starting a relationship with probably the only straight member, Kate Bishop. Unfortunately, monogamy must have been a bit different on his world, because they fizzled out after he tried to get with Exterminatrix mid-mission. You heard the name, what more do you want? A little bit later, after Kate had traded the Young for the West Coast, they ended up working together again. At the time, she was dating Johnny Watts, aka Fuse. Think Kevin Levin, but with access to vibranium. His late mother was ex-Dora Milaje and left behind some earrings that he can use to turn into a big metal boy. Technically, he can absorb other things, but why would you want to? The two of them were cute together, but unfortunately, it seems like Kate has a type. A tie-in novel confirmed that the boys used to date, but it couldn't have lasted long, cause by the time Marvel Boy's on the Guardians of the Galaxy, he's able to date Hercules. As in, yes, that Hercules. Now, I trust we all read Percy Jackson and watched the Disney movie a completely healthy amount of times, and you don't need me to explain Herc's whole deal to you. Just know that in Marvel, Olympus is a pocket dimension adjacent to Earth and accessible via a conveniently named mountain, at least when it's not a spaceship that's wrecking planets. And in addition to the odd labor, Marvel's Herc likes to do things like go to the Playboy Mansion or cosplay as Thor to experience popularity. Yeah, it's no secret Marvel's preferred pantheon is the Norse, and honestly, I could probably use them to fill up the rest of this list, cause, you know, mythology. But for now, let's just focus on Loki. Or Kid Loki? Eichel? It gets confusing. So here's what we're gonna do, guys. I'm gonna say some words, and you just let them wash over you, okay? Old evil Loki died and was reborn as Kid Loki, who changed, became good, and repaired his relationship with his brother. Desperate not to end up like his old self, but also apparently an idiot, he kept a fragment of said self as a pet. Nicknamed Eichel, it gave the kid impartial advice, except no it didn't. Obviously, it's Loki. It manipulated him into dying so he could reclaim the body. Now, neither as evil as the OG or as good as the kid he killed, this newest Loki did their best. They're the one who transitioned from the god of lies to the god or goddess of stories, and was most firmly established as both gender fluid and bi, cause of, you know, mythology. And the nice thing about all that is, Now Valkyrie will seem simple, which is good because I already covered her being bonded with a mortal woman named Annabelle Riggs in an earlier video, and while that situation did confirm her bisexuality, her story actually begins a few millennia earlier. Real name Brunhilde, she was originally a mortal woman herself, whom Odin charged with ferrying the dead to Valhalla after he murdered her first love. Shockingly, he proved to be a bit of a shitty boss. Not only did he ignore her while she was held captive for a couple centuries, or trapped in the body of a different woman named Barbara Norris, but when she finally got all of that sorted out, he made her a babysitter. Specifically, she was tasked with guarding Moondragon, who you can tell is a powerful psychic because she's got the Xavier cut. Real name Heather Douglas, she was the daughter of Drax the Destroyer, but raised by Thanos' father. Don't ask. And originally showed up on Earth as Madame McEvil, cause I guess big brain doesn't equal big creativity. Now over the years, she bounced back and forth between heroism and villainy, sometimes serving on the Avengers and macking on Daredevil, and other times killing her bio dad and ruling a planet. That's why Valkyrie was supposed to keep an eye on her, and good thing too, cause it turns out she was corrupted by a being called the Dragon of the Moon, which in hindsight should have been clear because there's no way she was coming up with a name that cool on her own. Still, for all her faults, she was a good friend to Genus Fell, who shared a body with Rick Jones, and Rick's wife, Marlo Chandler, briefly bonded with the Avatar of Death, cause I guess just nobody likes being in their own body anymore. Moondragon popped by to see if this situation had any negative side effects, which duh, though less duh, they developed feelings for each other and ran off together. Sadly, it didn't last as Marlo returned to try and patch things up with her husband, but silver lining, Heather did find her own captain soulmate in Phyla-Vell, who is also not bi. She is actually one of Marvel's oldest and most famous lesbians, whom I fully forgot about on the other vid. My apologies. Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about Rachel Summers, aka Marvel Girl, who is like Marvel Boy in that she's not originally from 616. And no other way. She's not Kree or a cockroach or any of that nonsense. Her story is simple. She is the daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey from the dystopic Days of Future Past timeline, where she is also married to Franklin Richards, which means I can counter for this. Though admittedly, calling her Marvel Girl is kind of absurd. She much more often goes by Phoenix or, more recently, Ascani, which is the name she used when she was shunted into a different dystopic future and formed a mystical space cult to help raise her baby brother, this old man. Like I said, simple. While on 616, she originally served on the X-Men before helping Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler found Excalibur. She went on to date one of them. It's not who you think. But these days, she's happy with the most recent leader of the team, Betsy Braddock, aka Captain Britain. If you don't recognize her, it's probably because she used to go by Psylocke and was Asian. As a result of the world's freakiest and longest Friday, she was stuck in the body of a woman named Quanon for over 30 years. So afterward, it was only fair to let her keep the popular name while she took up her brother's mantle. Don't worry though, he got to become Captain Avalon, cause Avalon is a real place in a dimension called Otherworld that sits at the nexus of all reality. Did y'all know Captain Britain is where we actually got the term 616? They're multiverse cops. Comics, man. Now, interestingly, Betsy was actually teased as bi way back in 2013 while she was dating Fantomex, a robot who dreams of being Gambit. Okay, fine, that part's not like technically canon, but still he's a cyborg super sentinel who chooses to present himself as a suave French-speaking thief. I feel like we can all see his inspiration. Not being a real boy, his anatomy doesn't make a ton of sense. Like his nervous system is also his ship, and he had 3 brains. Yes, past tense, because if the X-Men are gonna do anything, it's clone stuff. It didn't take long for each brain to get its own body, one of which was female, and after taking on the name Cluster, she continued her relationship with Betsy and developed one with Fantomex. Which means not only was she bi, but because whatever part of her was attracted to men used to be part of Fantomex, reasonably, so was he. Now, making a gender-bent version of a character to explore same-sex attraction as still straight is not great, but it's also not new. Marvel did it to God in the 70s. We've never really used this metric, but the being known as the Beyonder is presumably Marvel's most powerful queer character. In fact, when they first appeared as a shaft of golden light in the original Secret Wars, they were said to be the most powerful character in general. That's probably no longer true, because comics are gonna come comic, and now he's part of a whole race called the Beyonders, while other characters evoke the big capital G, but he's still the best dressed. His classic look comes from Secret Wars 2, which explored him exploring life in the physical universe. This included lots of hands-on study regarding the human obsession with desire. And he didn't discriminate based on gender because why would he? He could just as easily present as a woman. Wink wink, nudge nudge, point is he had a wide array of experiences. And surely the same could be said about most of Marvel's grand cosmic characters. Like Doop. You thought I'd miss a chance to talk about the lean, mean lima bean? My precious green boy hails from the kingdom of Marginalia, the place between the panels, and his abilities include possible omniscience, omnipotence, and the power of funk. He speaks his own language, can do anything, and cosplays as a mutant cause who's gonna call him out? He started out as X-Force's camera guy, but was a little too artsy for their taste, so he migrated to rigging school board votes by sleeping with multiple members. And was that a joke? Yeah, but so is everything Deadpool's done, and he's Marvel's most famous pansexual. He's like so famous, it would have felt weird to leave him out, but until recently, any attraction of his to anything other than the opposite sex has been played strictly for laughs. Thankfully, that changed in 2022, when he began dating Valentine Wong, a non-binary assassin whose powers allow them to concoct chemicals and secrete them through syringe-shaped fingers. Eat your heart out, Eddie! Again, I trust I don't have to explain Deadpool to you. He's like Marvel's most famous character outside of Spider-Man and Wolverine, coincidentally the two men he most wants to fuck. Now, a lot of you are probably hoping I'm gonna segue into a Wolverine section. Unfortunately, Krakoan connotations aside, he is not bisexual, and neither are his daughters, despite having a better case. No, the only Snickman to officially swing both ways is Akhiro, Logan's half-Japanese son from the 1940s, who premiered as essentially his father, but worse. He's got the classic Wolvie starter pack of powers, but with less morals and the added ability to influence other people's emotions through pheromones, which he's used since his first appearance to manipulate and seduce both men and women alike. And obviously, that's not great. Though it should be said, in recent years, they've clarified that he cannot create emotions like love or lust, he can just amplify what is already there. Which is good, because over the years, he's gone from a truly despicable villain to a pretty chill hero. In the Krakoan age, he even served on a team alongside both his ex, Somnus, and his current girlfriend, Aurora. Though whether they're still together is up in the air, because these days he has his hands full being possessed by the demon Bagra Ghul and serving as the demonic enforcer, Hellverine, a character who can only aptly be described as sick. Shockingly, this puts him in a similar boat to one of Marvel's oldest bisexual characters, the Black Widow. Not that one. No, Clairvoyant was the Black Widow of the Golden Age, first appearing in 1945 as a 2-bit medium turned Satan's personal assassin. You get the bit, right? The more evil people who die, the more powerful he becomes, and he's not exactly known for letting nature run its course. Plus, things got really easy in World War II when she could just mow down Nazis. Now, she was held in suspended animation, as was the style at the time, but was defrosted shortly after the first superhero civil war when the government needed new stooges, which was good for her because she got to go to a gay bar and learn some things about herself. She started to explore relationships with women as well as with fellow old-timer the Phantom Reporter, sometimes simultaneously. Because bisexuals love threesomes. I said this video was hard, right? Good, let's talk more about Satan. Not so much a singular character as a fun way for demons to play pretend. Lots of things have claimed to be Satan, but it's unclear if he even really exists. Though why should that stop him from having kids? Technically, Daimon and Satana Hellstrom are the children of Marduk Kurios, aka the Devil. An inherently religious individual, he made sure to legally marry their mother, Victoria Hellstrom, before siring his demon seed. But cause of nonsense, they're also sort of the children of a bunch of hell lords all pooling their essence together to create one Satan in vibe. All that's important is that Daimon was an idiot who, despite having a pentagram birthmark and being fed human blood, took a sec to put the pieces together. His sister was doing sacrifices at 3. Guess which one got to get raised in hell and which went to the orphanage after mommy died? As an adult, Daimon finally locked in and became the hero Hellstrom, boldly switching 2 letters around, and even briefly married co-defender Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat. No relation. Satana joined an all-girls group called the Witches, where she bullied Jennifer Kale for being bi. Skilled sorcerer, battle mage, and Man-Thing's best friend, Jennifer is the heir to the Tome of Zira-Na. That's code for her family's in a cult and bad at guarding a book. Almost all of her adventures involve trying to track this thing down in some way. Why don't you make fun of her over that instead of her sexuality, Satana? Were you raised in hell or a barn? Though I imagine they would get along better these days now that Satana has found her true calling, running a nightclub in Las Vegas, where she max on angels and her brother flirts with wizards. But now let's move on from the devil, okay? It's Mephisto's turn. Would you believe his kid named Blackheart also ran a casino in Vegas? This was after his father stripped him of his power and stranded him on Earth, which is sort of his favorite thing to do. I guess if it worked for Thor, it can surely work backwards for him. I mean, the casino was stealing people's souls, so it kind of worked the first few dozen times, but on the most recent expulsion, it seemed to have backfired as he joined Avengers Academy, where he took on the name Gabriel and started flirting with everyone. Gender be damned. This included other notable nepo baby Brielle Brooks, aka Bloodline. Her dad is Blade, which means she's a quarter vampire and therefore bisexual. Listen, we can stand around yapping about ye old coding, but I feel like we all get they're the young Avengers of classic monsters. Even Vlad Dracula, who is, yes, that Dracula, seems to be bisexual, not even in another problematic, manipulative sort of way. He seems to genuinely care about his consorts, or at least enough to be horrified when they're killed in front of him. Before you get too sad, reminder that is literally Dracula. There's a reason Blade's favorite hobbies include stabbing him, and he tried to train Brielle in that art from a young age, though at the academy she's focused on more serious matters like her burgeoning feelings for fellow student Escapade. And whether or not she's technically bi is still sorta up in the air, but it's the label she's going with for now, so I say it counts. Staying on vampires for a bit, you remember Morbius? Not bi. I don't care what vibes the movie brought. However, Elizabeth Nikos, the sister of Michael's best friend Emil, who was described as a loving shadow behind them, definitely is. Though, after Michael morbed all over her brother, she swore vengeance and became a hunter, leading her to cross paths with the Forgiven, a sect of vampires who have sworn off killing humans and subsist only on eating animals, making them about as monstrous as the average individual. Seriously, this is larger beef for like vampire stories in general, but you're not tragic for having to kill a cow in order to survive. That's called going to McDonald's. But I digress. One member named Inca, who was, let's say, the least dedicated of the bunch, flipped the script on Elizabeth and seduced her to get information. Now, it is possible that this does not reflect either woman's sexuality and is just a byproduct of Inca's vampiric abilities, but that's kinda gross, and she's never done it before or since, so I'ma assume, much like her diet, her powers of seduction are shockingly human. Anyways, speaking of women unfortunate enough to have crossed paths with the Spidey rogue, Aja Arisha met Kraven the Hunter when he was still just Sergei the Slightly Disturbed. Actually, at the time, she was the one called the Hunter, because she was a member of the Balu Ai, a secluded all-female sect of Wakandan mystics. They taught her all sorts of fancy things, like how to live forever and bury people alive for 2 weeks before she left to travel the world. After courting men and women alike for over a century, she finally fell in love and had a child. Not with Kraven. He's the stepdad, or rather, the dad who stepped up and took her kid. He renamed him Gregor Kravinoff and let him chill on the sidelines until after he pieced out of the story. Meanwhile, Aja changed her name to Tracy and became a celebrated author and lecturer, until she became friends with a nice man named Peter Parker, and well, that went how it went. And I know what you're thinking. Why is it always a tragic side character who's queer and not the villain themselves? We want evil bi people. Well, good news, you got Spy Master. Not that one, the one who killed that one. Sinclair Abbott was a rich philanthropist married to a woman named Greta by day and a master of disguise by night. Though, while undercover trying to sabotage Tony Stark, he fell in love with a man named Tim Kababa. I'm talking real domestic taxes and laundry style love, you know? He still had to take him out, though. That's called being a professional. He tried to avoid any necessary arteries. There's also Sybil Dvorak, also known as Skeen, and other names that haven't aged so well. She's an old Spider-Woman villain who later joined up with the Thunderbolts, though she was always willing to go hang in Casablanca if any of the other members wanted to jump ship. Her power is psychokinesis, and you can tell she's a mutant because she mainly uses it to turn things into tentacles. Conversely, Ian Soo is an inhuman who only has lame, non-tentacle based telekinesis. His girlfriend dumped him when he got powers, so he became a supervillain called the Telekinean. And if that name doesn't show you how unserious he was about a life of crime, just know Hellcat came to talk him down, and now he's her roommate and dating her best friend. Though if we want to talk about reformed deformed villains, we gotta mention Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat. Most of you probably think of her as Spider-Man's occasional love interest and Marvel's answer to Catwoman, which is not true. She's a master thief with a cat motif. What more do you want? Cybernetic enhancements that give her claws and the ability to imbue others with bad luck? Really? I got great news. In addition to Spider-Man, she has lots of romantic interests who are women, including Odessa Drake, the head of the New York Thieves Guild, and Chandra, the head of the rest of them. A member of the Externals, which is kind of like the Eternals, but with an X for branding, Chandra is an immortal mutant with the powers of boredom. Sometimes that means she just wants to fuck Gambit, sometimes it means she makes a pact with the thieves and assassins guilds of the world, offering eternal life to one and superpowers to another. Though even she doesn't seem to super remember what all of that was about, as she spends most of her time now either offering to reinstate or break the pact depending on what she did on her last whim. Which is why the New York Thieves Guild gave up on her entirely and switched their patronage to the Gilded Saint, but we super do not have time for that. No, we gotta talk about Space Eternals, like Eros, Thanos' little bro from Titan. You know, Harry Styles in that movie that's definitely still happening. If the name didn't tip you off, his thing is being a hedonist, as on top of the usual Eternal power set, he possesses the ability to trigger the pleasure center of people's minds, which, again, is not great. Shockingly, unlike Daken, he started out as a genuine superhero, even serving on the Avengers under the name Star Fox. No relation. Which made it even more wild when he was put on trial for sexual assault. They do explain that he wasn't always using his abilities this way, and it was caused by Thanos messing with his brain, but it's still clearly Marvel acknowledging that this sort of power is just icky. Which is why he asked Moondragon to remove the power entirely, and even though it doesn't stick, he still refuses to use it. Even when the whole world was at stake, rather than control anyone's mind, he opted to rely on his own natural charm to convince businessmen and politicians to act in other people's best interest. It didn't work. Now, of course, once we open the floor to aliens, the conversation about sexuality gets a little ridiculous. Like, Johnny Storm once dated this thing. What does that mean? Well, that he's straight, because her name is Angela and she identifies as a woman, but you see what I'm getting at, right? Gender is a human concept that doesn't always apply. So it's no wonder that a lot of Marvel's pansexual characters are aliens like Xavin or Steck'ee. One is a Skrull and the other is irrelevant, but both see gender as nothing more than a way to express themselves because their entire species can shapeshift. Hell, Xavin directly relates presenting as female every day to having to wear the same hat. Though that begs the question, does this apply to earthly shapeshifters like Mystique? Maybe. Frankly, we don't know a ton about Raven Darkholme, not how old she is, whether this is her original form, or if that is even her real name. She used it while working for the government, but also why would she use it if she was working for the government? After all, she's the queen of espionage, or at least committing to the bit. Sometimes that bit is stealing Magneto's team name while he's busy being a baby, roll with it, or it's having a relationship with everyone from Sabretooth to Iceman. Some of them are funnier than others, but by far her most notable, and some would say only genuine relationship is with her wife, Irene Adler, aka Destiny. After all, not only do they have a child together, but they even managed to raise one. But while they were always intended to be lovers, it wasn't confirmed until 2019, meaning you could easily read both women as either lesbian or bi, depending on how much you want to chalk up to our old buddy censorship. But I threw Destiny into the Elvit, so it's only fair to talk about Mystique now. In a similar situation over on the multi-level marketing side of things, I covered Richter last time because honestly, I just didn't want to have to explain Shatterstar, but seems like the time has come. Also called Gavidra 7, because it kind of resembles a name if you squint, he hails from a pocket universe dimension thingy called Mojo World, which is ruled by beings without spines. A scientist named Arise used Shatterstar's DNA to create a subservient vertebrate race, which was kinda like humanity, give or take a couple fingers and some hollow bones. One of these was Longshot, a hero who briefly served on the X-Men where he fell in love with Dazzler. The two had a kid who, through time travel nonsense, grew up to be Shatterstar, which, yes, means he is technically his own granddaddy. But that's not the only notable thing about him. He's also got weird two-bladed swords and a ponytail, and he likes Shaky Rock Boy. Now, Shady Buns is one of those characters who's easy to read as bi just because he seems to want to have sex with everyone. Is that great representation? I don't know, but it's not uncommon. Back in the early 90s, Shinobi Shaw made waves when he was being doted on by both men and women while chilling in a hot tub. The yuppie son of the villain Sebastian Shaw, or technically his bio dad is Sebastian's best friend Leland, but we don't have time to get into that mess. Shinobi's goal was to kill his father and replace him as the Black King of the Hellfire Club, which he succeeded at in his first appearance. From there, he went on to join the Upstarts before falling to the greatest enemy of all, a lack of popularity. But don't worry, he got resurrected on Krakoa and is back to chilling in hot tubs. Sometimes a character just has their niche. On the whole, Krakoa was a pretty sexually liberated place, which gave us a lot of interesting pairings like Loa and Mercury. Real name Alani Ryan, Loa is a Hawaiian mutant with the power to phase through solid matter. Or actually, her power is being able to disintegrate solid matter, but she walks through it all the same. She used to date Joshua Foley, aka Elixir, but when he became 1/5 of the Messiah, they sort of fizzled out, so she tried to hook up with perhaps the least compatible person around. Cecily Kincaid, aka Mercury, has a body made out of Mercury, which meant that the moment they tried to get intimate, she literally unraveled. Not loving that, they sought a safe sex alternative in the form of a psychic mind meld. Unsurprisingly, that was a bit intense, and the two did not last. Don't worry though, these days Mercury is in an open relationship with Bling, and Loa has an Atlantean amulet, so that's neat. But I know what you're thinking. If everyone on the island is having sex, then surely there's a lot of babies lying around, right? Well, firstly, no, not necessarily. And secondly, yes, there were. A lot of them ended up in a place called the Bower, looked after by Stacy X of all people, possessing snake-like scaly skin and pheromone powers, though less mind control and more stimulating certain bodily responses. Stacy first appeared as a mutant sex worker. She had a brief stint on the X-Men and a fling with Angel, and was confirmed bisexual in 2011 when she hooked up with Marvel's fourth most relevant pop star, Sugar Cane, who is not a mutant, but did date Chamber for a second, so that's a fact. But enough about the Krakoan. Let's talk about the Iraqi. You know, those mutants who got shunted into a hell dimension thousands of years ago and evolved into a warrior society that now lives on Mars. Those guys! Specifically, let's focus on Solem, a mutant with adamantium skin who subverts tropes by being a hedonist with trauma. He once hooked up with the prince consort Bracken, the husband of Apocalypse's daughter, War. Like the first one. Get it? But rather than admit to the affair, or even his own sexuality, Bracken challenged Solem to a duel that he promptly lost. Now, to be fair, he had a healing factor, so we thought the fix was in, but Solem pulled the old Uno reverse. And don't get it twisted, Solem is like pretty evil, but that doesn't make the specific story less sad. For a more open look at interdimensional alien marriage, let's turn to Mors and his wife Aradia. When they discovered an injured Star-Lord, not only did they nurse him back to health, but they offered to make him their third. And Quill accepted because he is also bisexual. The three of them were married for over 100 years before Peter returned to his home dimension, which, to be clear, is 616. I'm talking about the version more like the movies, not the original space cop who wanted to fuck his own ship. This Star-Lord's notable relationships include Gamora and, of course, his ex-fiancée, Kitty Pryde. Also known as Sprite, Ariel, Shadowcat, Kate, and Shadowcat with a K, Kitty became the seminal Kid on the X-Men after joining during the Dark Phoenix saga back in the 70s. Since then, she's grown into an icon of the franchise, meaning the road to confirming her as bisexual has been a long one, paved with every interaction with Rachel Summers, her almost moving in with Karma before realizing she didn't go that way, and the most devastating rooftop chat since BoJack Horseman on the night before her wedding with the groom's little sister, Magic. And listen, I'm not saying that in that moment Kitty realized she was marrying the wrong sibling, I'm just saying she didn't end up going through with it, and when she did finally kiss a girl on Paige, there was a certain familiarity. But hey, at the end of the day, Kitty is still young and figuring herself out, and she's not the only one. Adam Blackveil, aka Night Mask, was a perfect human created by Ex Nihilo for something white event, something incursion, Secret Wars. Point is, even he had to go to college to realize he liked boys too. Yes, Adam rejected being on the Avengers to attend ESU with his good buddy Kevin Connor, aka Starbrand. They had the quintessential college experience, which in Marvel means lots of villain attacks and at least one horrifying death. But hey, he's in therapy now and apparently polyamorous. Also at ESU around this time was Julie Power, aka Lightspeed. One of the few Marvel characters allowed to age, she's been enduring unforgettable trauma since childhood as a member of the Power Pack. Her and her siblings were given powers by a random horse alien who immediately died to avoid any sort of child endangerment accusation. Julie specifically got the gift of acceleration, which manifested mainly as flying with a big pansexual flag behind her. Unsurprisingly, that became a bit of an omen as she discovered discovered she liked girls. Actually, as far as I can tell, she's only ever dated other women, though she does identify specifically as bisexual when opening up about her feelings of jealousy regarding her famous girlfriend, Carolina Dean, now dating Nico Minoru. Carolina and Nico had known each other for years because both of their parents belonged to the same secret supervillain organization, the Pride. Nico's folks were dark wizards, and it turns out that's kind of hereditary. After her mother generously gave her the Staff of One, basically a random bullshit go machine backed by blood magic, she became the team's spellcaster. Now, notably, Carolina tried to start a relationship with her long before ever dating Julie, but Nico pulled a kitty and said that she didn't swing that way. It was only after they each had a couple failed relationships under their belt that they actually got together. And honestly, that's the most relatable thing I've said all day. So we'll leave it on a high note. Now, I imagine this is going to be the most controversial video in terms of who did and didn't make the cut, so if you want to consider literally any other character bi, go ahead. What am I gonna say? It's Pride Month.